Alright, I think we can get started. It's about 5 after. So, for any of you guys that are going to be actually doing the lab, this is a QR code and a shortcut to the branch that has all of the relevant information. If you do not have internet access, I also have 10 flash drives with that stuff pulled down, so I can give you one of these and you can copy out the information. It has all the hashes and stuff on there. So, tonight we're going to talk about password cracking, and we're going to do a quick lab. I'll talk very briefly before, kind of set you guys up for the lab, let you guys go. I'll be walking around, I can help you out with the lab, and then I'll do a quick briefing at the end to kind of say, like, what can we do to fix this problem? So before we get into that, my name is John Ziola. I run a group called Still City Information Security, which is at least a portion of the crowd tonight. I also know we have John Franelich. Is this a security class, or is this?
Yeah, it's an undergrad information introduction to data security.
Okay, cool.
So they're getting a broad range topics, web, network, software. Last week we talked. Dan came in and explained to them how he exfiltrated hashes. So tonight we're,
Oh, cool.
Right.
Great. Yeah, great corollary to that.
Yeah.
So anyways, my name is John Ziola. I run Still City InfoSec, and I also work right down the road. All of my contact information will be at the end of the slides. So first of all, what is a hash? Can anyone briefly explain what a hash is? It kind of says it up there, but I'm going to go back and say, if anyone can explain quickly, briefly, what is a hash? No. Okay. All right. No one's in the mood to participate tonight, I see. So the best way that it's ever been explained to me is a cryptographic blender. So it's kind of something where you put it in a blender, you blend it up, and then you get some sort of mush, you get some sort of drink or whatever out of it. But you can't take that end product and go back to the sandwich that you put in it, right? Like you're just going to have this kind of mush. That's essentially the point of hashing. They use what's called trapdoor functions, essentially modulo, and it's meant to be all one way. They use a lot more than just modulo, but that's one example. Some examples of hashing functions are
what's modulo?
So it's essentially division, and then you take the remainder.
Yes.
That's essentially what it's So there's some examples: MD5, SHA-1, 2, 256, 3, Shake 256. These bottom two are newer. SHA-3, Shake 256. They were actually just ratified in August by NIST, ST something 202. But anyways, so there's a lot of changes going on in this field. With the new hashing algorithm. Shake is actually a really interesting one because it allows a variable output length using sponge functions. It essentially allows you to have a hash of any length you want from 1 byte to infinity. So it fits into like 256 bit, you'll see lengths there. And there are other standard lengths like MD5 and SHA-2 and things like that. But the cool thing about Shake and about Ketchak, which is what it's based off of, is that it allows that variable length. So then we're talking about secure hashing algorithms. There are hashing algorithms, and then there are secure hashing algorithms. And secure hashing algorithms have 3 main characteristics, and then there's one important point to make about speed. Hey guys, grab a seat, whatever. So speed is obviously extremely important when it comes to hashing. Both in that you sometimes want it to be fast and sometimes you want it to be slow. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But there are also 3 other primary characteristics: pre-image resistance, collision resistance, and second pre-image resistance. And you can kind of read what these are. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that kind of notation. But pre-image resistance, so you can see like there's kind of a key at the bottom. So M is the message, K is the key, hash is your hashing algorithm, so like MD5 or SHA or whatever, and then H is your result. So you say like H equals, that's that, doesn't hash. I don't want to talk about this too much stuff. We can talk about this offline, or if you have any questions. I just wanted to give you kind of like a foundation for what the difference between just a general hashing algorithm and a secure hashing algorithm entails. So there's also a lot of different uses for hashes. So HMAC is a big one. You see message authentication. Fingerprints used a lot. Hash algorithms are used for integrity checking. So PKI is used a lot. Digital signatures, integrity checking, password verification. So we're going to focus tonight on a specific implementation of hashes, which is password verification. So speed, as I mentioned before, it's a little bit of a catch-22. Whenever you're doing a penetration test or when you're trying to crack passwords, you kind of want you're using what you can to speed this up. You want to be able to hash as many times per second as possible, so you can make more attempts. So you can do bigger brute force. You can apply more entropy, things like that. Ways that you can parallelize it include GPUs, ASICs, and FPGAs. A lot of people just use GPUs because they're kind of multi-purpose. You can play video games, and you can take that same box and crack passwords with it. But they do make ASICs and FPGAs, which are like specifically made for this one purpose. I don't see her here tonight, but a friend of mine has a bunch of ASICs for Bitcoin mining, and those translate very well into this because Bitcoin mining is essentially just hashing a bunch of times and looking for a specific output. So the way that these work is through parallelization. So the GPUs essentially have a lot of the ability to run the same instructions on a large amount of information at the same time. So if you have a small set, so I found this interesting. So if you have a small set of passwords to crack and you try to crack it on a GPU rig, it'll actually run slower than if you have a large amount of passwords because it can't take advantage of the parallelization as well. That's pretty interesting. There are some downsides to GPUs in general, and where ASICs and FPGAs are a little bit more helpful. Like a lot of GPUs don't have certain opcodes, like a rotate, which is used in some hashing algorithms. So they essentially have to perform, I think it's 3 instructions versus 1 instruction on like an ASIC. So there are definitely benefits to going the ASIC route, but a lot of people just end up going down the GPU route. So there's the other side of it. So when you're trying to defend, if you're storing people's passwords or a way to verify somebody's password, you want it to be as slow as possible within reason, as far as performance goes, so that if it were to get exfiltrated at some point, it would be tougher for them to extract the actual passwords. For instance, if they're just going to someone just does MD5 and you don't solve it. There are pre-computed rainbow tables available that do like all characters alphanumeric with symbols like 1 through 8. Yeah.
What's a salt?
I'm going to talk about that later.
Okay.
But a salt, and just to address it quickly, a salt is a way to make the hash. It's supposed to make the hash unique. So you take a pseudo-random bit of information and append or prepend it to a password so that it can't be pre-computed. So even if your password is literally like lowercase password, you append a unique salt to it. It's now a unique output hash, so you can't pre-compute that stuff. You have to do it at the time whenever you retrieve the salt. And then there's also pepper and stuff. We'll talk about that later. So password cracking in recent news. How many of you guys have heard about Ashley Madison? I hope like everybody. If you haven't heard about it, I don't know where you've been. So they, interesting thing about this, so they use bcrypt with 12 rounds. And this is kind of to give a good, I think it's a great comparison of the different hashing algorithms in addition to like the technical details here. So people were working on cracking the bcrypt 12-round password, and they got about 4,000 passwords cracked in 1 week. And those are essentially like the password ABC123. There were literally 1 character passwords. Like those are the ones that are getting cracked there. And then there's MD5 tokens, which was a little bit more than just the password, but they were able to crack 11 million of them in 10 days. So just to give you a comparison there, 4,000 in 1 week, 11 million in 10 days. And it's diminishing returns on the MD5, so if you write it down to 7 days, it'd probably still be like 9 million. I have a lot of details about that if you're interested. There's also a LastPass breach where they use PBKDF2, which we'll talk about that later. But that's a way of strengthening a password by essentially hashing a bunch of times. They essentially did it 105,000 times. So they did it 5,000 times on the on the client, and 100,000 times on their servers before they stored it. So effectively 105,000. And then other ones that you might be familiar with: Xbox Live, Raptor, Twitch, Flex. You know, these are happening all the time. This is something that's important to know about because it actually does happen and it can affect your users because of password reuse. So a lot of these people will use whatever, ABC123 for their password on Ashley Madison, and they'll use the exact same username, the exact same password on, their Yahoo account or something like that. Did you have a question?
Do you know what Xbox Live uses?
No, I don't remember. I don't even know if I have it in here. No. So that is pretty much it. I'm going to do a quick intro to the lab. I don't want to talk too much. And I'll talk at the end of the lab about some of the things that we can do to kind of secure yourself. Talk more about salts, peppers, KDF2s, some other PEG, SRP stuff. If you guys are familiar with that. So, quick intro to the lab. I want to set scope. So the scope of this is essentially database, web, application style dumps, not necessarily operating system dumps. So if you were to exfil like a SAM file or something from a Windows box, you're going to get different algorithms. Like NTLM, LM hashes are ancient, NTLM hashes, and then you can get various, on Linux there are various choices on how you store your passwords, including Blowfish and Des, or SHA, whatever. A couple other quick things, more about the tools that we're going to use tonight. So, a brief intro to open source. I don't want to talk too much about this, but there's FLOSS versus FOSS, free, Libre open source software versus free and open source software. So these are essentially two different licenses for open source, and you can see that they differ a lot. So like what's required in this one, which is freeze and beer, is nothing, but freeze and free speech, you have all of these requirements that if you're going to reuse. So anyways, kind of just beware of the license. If you're going to be reusing code from somebody, make sure that you know what the requirements are. Like in some cases, if you use code, like with, I think it's GPL, like you're required to leave that open source and available to the public. And other ones, like MIT's, I think, I forget, allow you to bring it in-house, like if you're writing a product or something. Another thing that's interesting is support is kind of free in the open source world. So, but you kind of need to be beware of that. So beware of soon. I found this example. I thought it was perfectly illustrates how I feel about open source. So if I can go to the next slide. There we go. So this website was down for maintenance. They moved servers on July 11th, 2013, and they'll be up soon. So that's kind of the thing that you'll see a lot of times when you work with open source software is this is some guy working on it in his personal time. You don't know what soon actually means. This screenshot was taken like 4 days ago, and it's going to be back up soon since 2013. You'll also find a lot of broken pages and links and really interesting things that you won't find with enterprise software. So depending on your use case, you might want to take that into account. So for instance, this club is closed forever. This domain is recently been listed. You have 404s, webpage not available. All of these are legitimate, used to be password cracking websites. There's your connection is not secure, and this one is Django with debug on, and they're giving a 404, so you can get all their debug information. That's pretty nice of them to do that out there for us. But this is the kind of stuff that you see whenever you deal with open source software. Not to say that open source software isn't great, but just beware of using it, reusing code, and how much you can depend on it for like availability and things like that. So there are a couple of options for the lab, and then after this we're going to get going. So there are three main options. There's the beginner, the intermediate, and the competition. The main differences here is the beginner. So the hashes are different for all of them. The beginner has a download section in the README that's links to a bunch of different tools that you can use. It also has step-by-step with available hints. So if you go into the READMEs, the various READMEs, and there's a hints folder, in the hints folder it will literally tell you command by command what to do to crack these passwords. Intermediate's a little bit different. It's different hashes, or different passwords. It also has a downloads, but has more vague steps. So if you want to kind of like fool around, or you've done this before, and you want to test how good you are at it, you might want to go to intermediate. And for those of you that are experienced password crackers, there's also a competition where I'll be giving away something, probably a book, a penetration testing book, or two. And so that is available for download now. So I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say, like, if you want to use that as your whatever, like, just do it. And if you think you can win the competition using that, I'll let you try. In order to win something for the competition, you have to crack 80% or more. So the first person to crack 80% and can submit some sort of proof to me that they did it and what time they did it, they will get the first award. And then the second award is how much of it can you crack. So how far into it can you get. If you can crack it 100%, then the first person to crack 100% will get it. I doubt that you're going to do that.
Can we do teams?
Sure, you have to share the prize. I don't have prizes for everybody, but yeah, you want to do teams of like 3 people or something and try to do a competition, that's fine. Honestly, if you've never done this before, I think just looking at the beginner, look at the hints and the step-by-step. They aren't perfect, but it'll get you most of the way there. If you do find anything wrong with any of these steps, broken links, anything like that, let me know. One of the primary things to know is if you're going to be looking at this on GitHub, make sure you're looking at the branch. Make sure you're looking at my password cracking branch, because I haven't merged that into master yet. So all the links will be broken if you're looking at master. So there's a little drop down that says branch master. You click the drop down on GitHub, and there's an option for password cracking 2015, 09, 24, whatever today's date is. Has anyone made much success with the competition? No. Okay, no winners tonight then. Sorry. So I'm going to do a quick demo. And then I'm going to finish up the couple slides that I have. So this is actually coworkers of mine, Brian, up here in the corner. His CUDA GPU cracking rig. So this has 2 GPUs in it. It's at his house, and we're essentially remoted into it. And you'll see that we're going to run CUDA hashcat right there. CUDA hashcat 64. A lot of you guys had questions about how it's using the GPUs with hashcat. One clarification there is that hashcat is CPU based. You have to use OCL hashcat or CUDA hashcat to use the GPUs. And then on Macs, you additionally need to use that GFX whatever to make sure it goes to the discrete GPU. Anyway, so what this is going to do, this is going to work on the dump 1 for beginners. So this is the SHA-1. If you guys didn't find that out, this is SHA-1 unsalted. And then so you'll see that he's specifying what inputs to use. M100, that's SHA. And then this is an interesting GPU temp retain 65. So with GPU cracking rigs, you can create a lot of heat. So sometimes you don't want to overheat it. So they have ability to kind of build that in. So I'm going to run this real quick. All right, so I think, is it just using a pot? Yeah, okay, there we go. So let it run for a couple seconds, pause it, and then show the status. So you can see there's a lot more options, a lot more information here than you guys are seeing in hashcat. For instance, it's kind of cut off here. Let me, there we go. So you can see kind of like here's what we recovered. So we already recovered 59.81%. And you can see the speed of the total GPUs is 1,529 kilohashes per second. So that's 1.5 million a second. So you can get really up there with these boxes. You can get into the billions with these boxes, depending on, you'll notice like this GPU is a whole other level than this GPU, just because that one's a little bit newer. But I mean, that's just a quick summary of kind of what you can do with these tools if you do have a GPU cracking rig. You could crack this thing. How long did it take you to crack the dump 1?
8 minutes.
8 minutes.
It's at 989 and 94.
Yeah, yeah. So pretty much almost 100% in like 8 minutes. So like that kind of stuff can be really helpful. Cool. And then I just want to cover a couple quick points, and then we're out of here. All right, so I think this is my only slide. So how do we defend? So there's a big amount of this work goes into the hashing algorithms themselves. A lot of people don't fully understand this, but hashing algorithms like MD5, SHA-1, 2, 3, they're not necessarily meant for password storage. They're used for password storage pretty much everywhere that I know about, but they're not meant, they weren't designed to store passwords. Even scrypt, which some of you guys might be familiar with, isn't designed to store passwords. It's designed to derive keys. So it's a little bit different. But so we can defend by using better algorithms, which essentially goes back to what we were talking about earlier about slowing things down and making it more resource intensive in different ways. So SHA-3 with the shape allows you to do variable output. That kind of throws a curveball at anybody that's trying to crack your passwords. Memory hard hashing is really interesting. So things that fall under that are bcrypt and scrypt. They essentially, they exploit weaknesses in GPU cracking, so that they're still very CPU intensive, but they're almost equal on a GPU cracking rate versus a heavy CPU rate. You can't really make use of the parallelization and things like that. It uses, like bcrypt uses glowfish, and it does a lot of things with like dynamic corners and memory, so you kind of have to have like these large amounts of memory. It really makes it more expensive to run the cracking rig as well, because there are different physical constraints about GPU pipelines versus memory, versus like DRAM or something like that. A couple other interesting things: SRP, iterated and floated S2K. Those ones you won't run into as much. Iterated and floated S2K is really only used in BGP. SRPs, if you look into PAKE, P-A-K-E, it'll kind of give you an idea of like what that is. It's really an interesting field, though. I have a lot of details on this, but if you want my summary, my suggestion, I would say bcrypt. I recently was looking into bcrypt versus scrypt, and I found out that there's actually some really interesting downgrade attacks against scrypt that lowers the amount of memory that's required and things like that, where bcrypt doesn't have those problems. Bcrypt uses static 4K memory allocation. So, and then there's better implementation. So there's not just the algorithm, but how you implement it. So PBKDF2 is, it stands for passive-based key derivation function version 2. But in summary, it's just do the same thing over and over and over and over. So you saw earlier when I was talking about LastPass, they do 105,000 iterations. That's PBKDF2. That's just do it over and over and over. And all you're doing is increasing the amount of resources it takes to get to that end result. So if I hash just one password 100,000 times, in order for me to compare and make sure that what you typed in is the right password, I'm going to have to hash it 100,000 times. So an attacker is going to have to hash each password 100,000 times. So you can make that a unique number. That's helpful, and it's almost like assault. So assault, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's meant to be a globally unique set of information that you can append or prepend to a password to make it globally unique. So even if it is literally password, you add all this gobbledygook at the beginning of it, hash it, and you get something different than if you were just a hashed password. And that's typically stored in the database in like a password table where you have almost literally salt : password hash, right? Or you have two different columns with the salt and password. And they use them whenever they're comparing. So you get the input from the user and you salt it and you compare it against the hash column. Pepper is a little bit different. So Pepper, the point of Pepper is to prevent, like if there's a SQL injection vulnerability and if someone's able to dump that table, they don't keep that globally unique set of information in that table. And that's all that's really different about it, is the location of where it is. It's effectively the same thing. So a salt is in the same table as a password. A pepper is typically in the code or something, and it's more globally unique than individually unique. So you'd say like, you have XYZ companies, you have a pepper, and it's you implement that pepper for all of your passwords. So you'd say, so it would look something like hash salt : password, and then you would append that same pepper that you use for every other password. Yes.
So I always learned that you shouldn't store the salt in the same place as the password. At least if you usually want the salt for everyone's account. Is that obsolete now then, or is that?
No, I mean, so that's generally a good suggestion. I just haven't seen it very much in implementation. It seems like people still seem to like store them together.
So we're basically going to do that same thing when we now use salt pepper.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Is Pepper like a global?
Yeah.
Like one ID to that company?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe
Yeah, so it still prevents people from being able to pre-compute, right? Because if you don't have that information, you can't pre-compute. Yeah. That's the point of it. Essentially, the only point of salts and peppers is to resist pre-computation or offline computation, so like someone can't go home and like work on it or whatever. They have to have those salts and peppers. So, any other questions? Because that's all I've got. And that's my contact information. My name's John Ziola. All that stuff pretty much just says John Ziola. If you Google me, you'll find it. That's all I got. So thank you very much. I hope you guys had a good time. I'm going to leave the materials out there for a while, so if you want to play, feel free to play.